Chief Engineer Riya Patel's hands trembled as she studied the holographic damage report of the TSS Endeavour. The last surviving ship of humanity's deep space fleet hung motionless in the orbit of Zethkari Prime, its quantum drive core spewing radiation into space. Around her, the crystalline walls of the alien space station pulsed with soft blue light, a stark contrast to the red warning indicators flooding her diagnostic panel. "Your vessel cannot be salvaged," announced High Technician Vothrel, his translucent appendages rippling with patterns of concerned violet. "The quantum matrix has undergone cascade failure. The technology must be allowed to return to the void with dignity." Raya fought back a bitter laugh. Dignity wouldn't save the lives of 300 crew members stranded 12,000 light-years from Earth. She turned to face the tall, ethereal being. "With respect, High Technician, humans have a different perspective on broken technology." Yes, Vothrel's translator chip rendered his harmonics into clipped English. "We have observed your species' peculiar habit of modification. It goes against the natural order. Each piece of technology has its designated purpose and life cycle." The engineer pulled up a more detailed scan of the drive core. To the Zethkari, whose technological advancement had come from studying and replicating naturally occurring quantum phenomena in their system's unique crystal formations, the idea of manually repairing or modifying technology was practically taboo. They treated their machines like living entities that should be allowed to die when they failed. "The natural order isn't going to keep my crew alive," Riya muttered, her mind already racing through possible solutions. The drive core's containment chamber had cracked during their emergency translation into Zethkari space, but the fundamental mechanism was intact. If they could fabricate a new containment vessel, "We will, of course, provide sanctuary for your crew until another vessel from your civilization can retrieve them," Vothrel offered diplomatically. "Though given the distance." 8 years, Riya cut him off. "That's how long it would take for the nearest human ship to reach us. We don't have that kind of time. Our life support systems are integrated with the main power grid. Once the emergency batteries run dry, we've got nothing." She expanded the hologram, highlighting the crystalline structure of the Zethkari station around them. "Your quantum containment technology is leagues ahead of ours. If you'd allow us to study it, adapt it." "Impossible." Vothrel's patterns shifted to alarmed crimson. "The crystals are sacred gifts from the cosmos. To modify them for foreign technology would be sacrilege." Riya clenched her fists. She'd known this would be their response, but hearing it still made her blood boil. "Then we'll die here. Is that what your gods want? To watch 300 people suffocate because of technological purity?" The alien's patterns swirled with conflicting colors. "Engineer Patel, please understand. Our laws regarding technology are not arbitrary. They arise from bitter experience. In our history." A priority alert cut through their conversation. Rita's heart sank as she read the update. "The containment breach is accelerating. We got less than 72 hours before total core failure." She met Vothrel's compound eyes. "After that, the radiation will make it impossible to even reach the ship. Everything on board, our database of human knowledge, our art, our history, the personal belongings of every crew member, will be lost forever." She watched the alien process this, his pattern cycling through troubled hues. The Zethkari were archivists at heart, their entire civilization built around preserving and studying the universe's natural phenomena. The idea of losing an entire culture's worth of data clearly disturbed him. "Perhaps," Vothrel began cautiously, "you could show me these modifications you propose, theoretically, so that I might better understand your species' approach." Raya didn't waste a second. She pulled up the ship's schematics and began explaining her plan. She needed to convince him that humans didn't modify technology out of disrespect, but out of a deep understanding of its principles and a drive to unlock its full potential. As she spoke, more Zethkari technicians drifted into the control room, drawn by the unusual discussion. Their patterns flickered with mixtures of horror and fascination as Rhea detailed how humans had learned to adapt and combine technologies from a dozen different alien species. "You see," she explained, sketching out a hybrid design that would mate Zeth-Carey crystal matrices with human quantum electronics. "We don't believe technology has just one purpose. Everything can evolve, grow, become more than its original design, just like living beings." "But the patterns," one of the younger technicians objected. "They must remain in harmony." "Then we find new harmonies." Rhea adjusted her design. "Look, if we calibrate the crystal lattice to these frequencies, it actually creates a more stable containment field than either technology could achieve alone." She could see the moment her words began to penetrate their cultural barriers. The Zeth-Carey patterns shifted from alarmed reds to curious blues and greens. They started asking technical questions, proposing refinements to her hybrid design. Vothrel remained silent, his patterns unreadable. Finally, he raised an appendage for attention. "What you propose goes against millennia of our traditions. Yet, your understanding of the underlying principles is undeniable. Perhaps there is wisdom in examining why we hold these beliefs so rigidly." He turned to address his fellow technicians. "We will not assist directly in modifying the sacred crystals." However, his patterns rippled with what Rhea was learning to recognize as Rhea amusement. "I cannot prevent Engineer Petal from accessing our technical archives for her theoretical studies. Nor can I stop any of you from engaging in philosophical discussions about the nature of technological harmony." Rhea felt hope surge through her chest. It wasn't permission, exactly, but it was a start. She had 72 hours to change thousands of years of cultural doctrine. As she dove into the technical archives with a group of increasingly curious Zeth-Carey, she smiled grimly. Humans had built their entire civilization on doing the impossible. They'd survived an irradiated Earth, reached the stars, and forged alliances with beings they'd once thought were mere fantasy. Now they would prove that even the most rigid barriers could be overcome with determination, ingenuity, and the willingness to see technology not as a fixed entity, but as a canvas for human creativity. The race against time had begun. The ancient archives of the Zeth-Carey stretched endlessly before Cultural Officer James Rodriguez, their crystalline data nodes glowing with centuries of accumulated knowledge. Under normal circumstances, he would have been ecstatic to be the first human granted access to such historical treasures. But with the Endeavor's core deteriorating by the hour, his research felt more like a desperate race against time. "You seek understanding of the great severance," said Archivist Nilith, her patterns shifting to deep indigo. A color James had learned indicated profound sorrow. She guided him through the towering crystal matrices, each one containing thousands of years of Zeth-Carey history. "If we're going to convince your people to help us, I need to understand why they're so resistant to technological modification," James replied, his eyes scanning the alien text as his neural translator struggled to keep up. High Technician Vothrel mentioned something about bitter experience. Nileth's patterns rippled with hesitation. "It is not a story we share readily with outsiders." She paused before a particularly ancient data node, its light dimmed with age. "But perhaps, given your situation, you should know." The crystal came to life under her touch, projecting images of a Zeth-Carey city from thousands of years ago. Unlike the organized, geometric structures of their modern architecture, this ancient metropolis was a chaotic blend of organic and mechanical forms. 3,000 years ago, we were not so different from humans, Nilith began. "We believed technology existed to be improved, modified, pushed beyond its original purpose. Our civilization reached heights of innovation that we have never dared approach since." The projection shifted, showing strange machines integrated directly with Zeth-Carey bodies, their patterns pulsing with unnatural colors. "We even began modifying ourselves, merging with our creations in ways that violated the natural harmony of our species." "Like cybernetics?" James asked, fascinated despite the growing sense of dread in his stomach. "Similar, but more invasive. We believed we could perfect ourselves through technological integration." Her patterns darkened. Then we encountered the void swimmers. The image changed to show bizarre, shadowy entities that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. They were ancient, incomprehensible beings who had transformed themselves so completely through technology that they had lost all connection to their original form. They saw us as kindred spirits, potential allies in their quest for perpetual evolution. James watched in horror as the historical record showed the void swimmers' true nature. They didn't want allies. They wanted test subjects. Entire Zethkari cities were transformed into living laboratories as the aliens forced increasingly unstable modifications on the population. Those who survived were changed forever. Nihilith's voice wavered. The harmony of their patterns corrupted beyond repair. When we finally drove the void swimmers away, our people swore never again to walk the path of unrestricted modification. Technology must be respected, understood, and preserved in its natural state, not twisted to serve our whims. James sat heavily in his hover chair, the weight of this revelation pressing down on him. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Few do," Nihilith replied. "We quarantined our system, rebuilt our civilization around principles of preservation rather than innovation. The crystals you see around you, we did not create them. We discovered them, studied them, learned to work in harmony with their natural properties. It is safer this way." "But surely there's a middle ground," James argued gently. "What Raya is proposing isn't about transforming or corrupting technology. It's about understanding it deeply enough to help it work better, to save lives." Nihilith's patterns showed conflict. "Perhaps, but fear is not always rational," Cultural Officer Rodriguez. "Even after 3,000 years, the memory of the void swimmers shapes every aspect of our society." James's communicator chimed. Another update from Rhea. The containment breach was accelerating faster than predicted. They might have less than 60 hours now. "Your people's caution is understandable," he said, standing. "But sometimes holding too tightly to the past can blind us to the needs of the present. The void swimmers violated your people because they didn't respect your right to choose. By refusing to even consider adaptation now, aren't you doing the same thing to yourselves?" The archivist's patterns flickered rapidly, processing his words. "You are not entirely wrong. But change is difficult, especially change that touches such deep cultural wounds. Then help us prove it can be different." James gestured to the historical records surrounding them. "Your ancestors believed in pushing boundaries, in reaching for the unknown. Yes, they got burned. Badly. But they also achieved incredible things before that happened. The key isn't to never innovate again. It's to innovate wisely, with respect and understanding." He pulled up the schematics Raya had designed, showing how they preserved the fundamental nature of the Zethkari crystals, while carefully enhancing their capabilities. "Look at how much thought she's put into maintaining the natural harmonies of your technology. This isn't destruction or corruption. It's evolution, guided by wisdom and respect." Nihilith studied the designs, her patterns slowly shifting from worried purple to thoughtful green. "You speak with passion about things you have only just learned. Why does our history matter so much to you?" "Because understanding each other is the only way forward," James replied simply. "Humans have our own dark history with technology. Wars, environmental destruction, AI rebellions. But we learned from those mistakes. We didn't stop innovating. We just got better at asking ourselves why we were doing it, and whether it served life rather than destroyed it." The archivist was quiet for a long moment, her patterns cycling through complex emotions. Finally, she touched another crystal, bringing up ancient engineering texts. "These documents, they detail the original properties of the crystals, before we limited ourselves to their basic functions. Perhaps your engineer would find them useful in her theoretical studies." James felt a smile spread across his face. "Thank you, Archivist Nihilith. This could make all the difference." "Do not thank me yet," she warned, though her patterns held a hint of hope. "Changing minds is harder than modifying technology. You still face resistance from those who remember only the pain of the past. Then we'll just have to show them a better future, James said, already sending the documents to Rhea. As he hurried back to the engineering bay, he couldn't help but feel that both humanity and the Zeth-Carri stood on the brink of something momentous. Either fear would win and hundreds would die, or two cultures would learn to bridge their differences and grow stronger together. The next few hours would determine which future would unfold. The emergency lights aboard the TSS Endeavour cast an eerie red glow across Captain Diane Wells's face as she studied the latest readings. The ship's life support systems were failing faster than anyone had predicted, and the contained radiation from the quantum core was starting to seep through their temporary shielding. "Talk to me, Rhea," she commanded, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "Where are we with the crystal integration?" Chief Engineer Potol looked up from her workstation, dark circles under her eyes after 48 hours without sleep. Around her, a mix of human crew members and Zeth-Carri technicians worked in tense silence, their activities technically classified as theoretical discussions to bypass cultural restrictions. "The simulations are promising," Rhea reported, projecting a holographic model of their hybrid containment system. "The crystal matrices could absolutely handle the quantum harmonics. But," she trailed off, glancing at their Zeth-Carri visitors. "But what?" "But we need more than just the research crystals they've allowed us to study. We need one of their sacred core crystals, the ones they use to power their entire station. Nothing else has the capacity we require." Captain Wells closed her eyes briefly. The core crystals were the heart of Zeth-Carri civilization, supposedly gifts from their gods. Even suggesting their modification would be seen as blasphemy. "Life support will fail in 18 hours. After that, we have maybe 3 hours of emergency oxygen. And Captain," Rhea's voice dropped, "the radiation containment is starting to buckle. If we don't fix this soon, we risk contaminating the entire Zeth-Carri station." The implications hung heavy in the air. They weren't just fighting for their own survival anymore. Their damaged ship threatened the very people who had offered them sanctuary. A soft chiming announced the arrival of James Rodriguez, accompanied by Archivist Nilith and, surprisingly, High Technician Vothrel. The Zeth-Carri leader's pattern swirled with troubled colors. "We have reviewed the historical archives," Vothrel announced without preamble, "and consulted with the Council of Elders. Your situation presents us with an unprecedented ethical dilemma." "With respect, High Technician," Captain Wells replied, "we're rather short on time for ethical debates." "Indeed. Which is why I must ask, if we were to, theoretically, allow access to a core crystal, could you guarantee its fundamental essence would remain unchanged?" Rhea straightened, suddenly alert. "The core's quantum signature would be preserved completely. We'd only be expanding its natural resonance field, not altering its basic nature. Like," she searched for an analogy they would understand, "like teaching a crystal to sing in harmony with our technology, not forcing it to learn a new song entirely." Vothrel's patterns shifted thoughtfully, an interesting metaphor, yet the risk. He was interrupted by a violent shudder that ran through the ship. Warning klaxons blared as new radiation alerts flashed across every screen. "Status," Captain Wells barked. "The containment field is failing faster than predicted," Rhea reported, her fingers flying over controls. "New estimate. We have less than 6 hours before catastrophic failure." The Zeth-Carri technicians' patterns flared with alarm as their own instruments confirmed the danger. The radiation would destroy not just the human ship, but could potentially destabilize their station's crystalline structure. "We must evacuate," one of them declared. "Abandon the human vessel." "No." The firm response came from Nilith, her patterns resolute. "I have studied their history, their ways. They understand more about adaptation and survival than we have allowed ourselves to remember. Our ancestors built wonders before fear closed our minds." "The archives are one thing," another technician protested. "The core crystals are sacred." "They are sacred because they preserve life," Nilith countered. "What better way to honor that purpose than to use them to save lives?" The void swimmers corrupted our technology because they did not respect its nature. These humans seek to work in harmony with it. Vothrel raised his appendages for silence. The council has authorized me to make an executive decision if circumstances became dire. It seems that moment has arrived. He turned to face Rhea. Engineer Patel, you will have access to one core crystal, but I must oversee every step of the integration process personally. Relief flooded Rhea's face, but her voice remained professional. Understood, High Technician. I've already prepared a step-by-step. Another violent shudder rocked the ship. A support beam groaned ominously. Engineering team with me, Rhea commanded, already moving. Captain, I recommend evacuating all non-essential personnel to the station. This could get rough. Agreed. Make it happen, people. As the evacuation began, James found himself helping coordinate between human crew and Zethkari officials. He watched in amazement as centuries of cultural barriers began to crack under the pressure of immediate necessity. Humans and Zethkari worked side by side, their different approaches to technology starting to blend into something new. In the ship's engineering bay, Rhea led her mixed-species team with precise efficiency. The core crystal pulsed with inner light as they carefully integrated it with human quantum matrices. Every step was a delicate balance between innovation and respect, between pushing boundaries and honoring traditions. Remember, she told her team as they worked, we're not forcing anything. We're asking the crystal to help us, working with its natural properties. The Zethkari developed their technology by listening to the crystals. Now we're just asking them to listen to us too. The hours ticked by in a blur of careful adjustments and tense measurements. The radiation warnings continued to escalate, and the ship's superstructure creaked under the strain. But slowly, steadily, human ingenuity and Zethkari wisdom began to merge into something unprecedented. The question was, would it be enough? And even if they succeeded, how would this moment change both civilizations going forward? The answer lay in the next crucial hours. The combined engineering team stood in tense silence as the hybrid containment system powered up for the first time. The core crystal pulsed with brilliant light, its natural resonance patterns interweaving with the quantum matrices of human design. Rita's fingers flew across her console, making minute adjustments as the energy levels rose. Quantum harmonics stabilizing, she reported, her voice tight with concentration. Crystal resonance at 80% and holding. High Technician Vothrel's patterns swirled with a mix of anxiety and fascination as he monitored his own readings. The crystal's signature remains pure, yet it's expressing capabilities we never thought possible. The engineering bay hummed with power as the new containment field began to form around the ship's damaged core. On the main display, radiation levels started to drop for the first time in 3 days. A collective breath of relief passed through the assembled crew. But their victory was far from certain. Captain Wells's voice crackled over the comm. Rhea, we're detecting fluctuations in the field strength. Southern quadrant is showing weaknesses. I see it, Rhea acknowledged, already adjusting parameters. But each change seemed to create new instabilities. The hybrid system was working, but it wasn't yet in perfect harmony. Something's missing. The crystal's fighting us. None of the younger Zethkari technicians, Miratel, moved forward, her patterns showing sudden insight. Not fighting. Singing off-key. Look. She pointed to a subtle pattern in the crystal's resonance that the human instruments hadn't detected. It's trying to establish a harmonic baseline, but our modifications are disrupting its natural rhythm. Rita's eyes lit up with understanding. We need to match its frequency first, then build our containment field around that. Like learning to dance with a partner instead of leading all the time. She turned to Vothrel. High Technician, we need access to the crystal's core frequency modulators. The Zethkari leader hesitated only briefly before moving to help. Together, they began fine-tuning the system, not by forcing the crystal to adapt to their needs, but by adapting their technology to work with the crystal's natural harmonies. The effect was immediate and stunning. The containment field stabilized, its energy patterns taking on an almost musical quality as human and Zeth-Carry technology found their shared rhythm. Radiation levels plummeted across all quadrants. Field strength at 120% of projected capacity, Rhea announced, a smile breaking across her exhausted face. The crystal isn't just containing the radiation, it's actively neutralizing it. Remarkable, Vothrel breathed, his pattern showing colors that none of the humans had seen before. It's as if the crystal chose to help once we stopped trying to command it. The success of the hybrid system sparked a flurry of activity throughout the ship. As the immediate crisis passed, both species began to truly appreciate what they had accomplished. Human engineers and Zeth-Carry technicians crowded around displays, excitedly discussing the implications of their breakthrough. "Look at these efficiency ratings," one human engineer marveled. "The crystal's natural properties enhance our containment field far beyond what we could achieve artificially. And our quantum matrices give the crystal new ways to express its inherent abilities," Miratel added, her patterns bright with enthusiasm. "We didn't change its nature, we helped it grow." James Rodriguez, observing from the corner with archivist Nihilith, couldn't help but smile at the scene. "It's amazing how quickly barriers fall when we're forced to work together." "Perhaps that is the true lesson here," Nihilith replied, her patterns thoughtful. "Our fear of the void swimmers led us to build walls around our technology, trying to protect it. But in doing so, we may have prevented it, and ourselves, from reaching our full potential." The next few hours saw a flurry of activity as the engineering team refined their hybrid system. What had begun as an emergency solution was rapidly evolving into something revolutionary. The humans shared their expertise in adaptive technologies, while the Zeth-Carry taught them the subtle art of crystal harmonics. More importantly, both species were learning from each other's perspectives. The humans gained a deeper appreciation for the importance of working in harmony with technology, rather than simply imposing their will upon it. The Zeth-Carry, in turn, began to see that responsible innovation didn't have to mean losing respect for their technological heritage. Captain Wells called a meeting of senior staff and Zeth-Carry leaders to discuss their next steps. The Endeavor was safe for now, but the implications of their breakthrough reached far beyond one ship's survival. "What we've achieved here," she began, looking around the conference room, "isn't just a technical solution. It's proof that our species can learn from each other, grow together." "Indeed," Vothrel agreed, his patterns showing new confidence. "The Council of Elders has been monitoring our progress closely. They believe this collaboration may mark a turning point in our civilization's relationship with technology." Rhea, who had finally gotten a few hours of sleep, leaned forward eagerly. "The hybrid system we've developed has applications far beyond emergency repairs. If we could continue working together, studying how human adaptation techniques can work in harmony with Zeth-Carry crystal technology, the possibilities are profound," Nihilith finished. "But more importantly, we've shown that innovation and respect can coexist. That progress doesn't have to mean abandoning our principles." As the meeting continued, plans began to take shape for a formal technological exchange program between the two species. But beyond the practical considerations, something more fundamental had changed. Both humans and Zeth-Carry had caught a glimpse of what they could achieve together, combining human ingenuity with Zeth-Carry wisdom. The crisis that had threatened to end in tragedy had instead opened the door to an entirely new future, one where the barriers between species and their approaches to technology began to dissolve, replaced by a deeper understanding of how to grow and evolve together. 6 months after the crisis, the Zeth-Carry space station had transformed. Where once crystalline halls stood in unchanging perfection, new hybrid technologies bloomed like gardens of light. The successful integration of human innovation with Zeth-Carry crystal technology had sparked a renaissance that neither species had anticipated. Rhea Patel stood at the observation window of the newly established Joint Technology Center, watching as teams of human and Zeth-Carry researchers worked together below. The center had become a symbol of what could be achieved when different approaches to technology found common ground. "The latest test results are remarkable," said Miratel, approaching with a datapad. Her patterns showed the confident colors of a young scientist who had found her calling. "The crystal-enhanced quantum drives are showing efficiency ratings 300% above standard models. And they're more stable too," Ria added, smiling at her former student who had become a trusted colleague. Who would have thought that treating technology with reverence would actually make it work better? The advances they'd made went far beyond mere technical improvements. The integration of Zeth-Carey crystal harmonics with human adaptive technology had opened up entirely new fields of study: medical equipment that worked in perfect harmony with biological systems, environmental technologies that could heal damaged ecosystems, communications arrays that could reach across vast distances with unprecedented clarity. James Rodriguez entered the observation room, accompanied by archivist Nileth. Over the past months, they had worked together to document the cultural transformation taking place on both sides. "The Council of Elders has approved the publication of the complete historical archives," Nileth announced, her patterns bright with pride. "Including the full story of the Void Swimmers. They believe it's time we share our past openly, so others can learn from both our triumphs and our fears." "And how are the traditionalists taking it?" Ria asked, knowing that not everyone had embraced these changes easily. "Better than expected," James replied. "Especially since we've proven that innovation doesn't have to mean abandoning respect for technology's natural properties. Some of our strongest supporters now come from the conservative factions who've seen how human adaptability can actually enhance their traditional practices." A soft chiming announced the arrival of Captain Wells and High Technician Vothrel. Both leaders had become prominent advocates for continued cooperation between their species. "The Human Zeth-Carey Accord has been ratified," Wells announced without preamble, her face breaking into a rare broad smile. "As of today, this station is officially designated as an open port for technological and cultural exchange." "The first of many," Vothrel added, his pattern showing the complex colors of profound satisfaction. "Already, 3 other systems have requested permission to establish similar facilities." The implications were staggering. For millennia, the Zeth-Carey had isolated themselves, protecting their technological heritage behind walls of tradition and fear. Now those walls were coming down, not in the violent way they had once feared, but through careful, respectful collaboration. "We've received interesting data from the deep space probes," Miratel said, pulling up a new set of readings. "The hybrid sensors are detecting evidence of ancient crystal formations in several nearby systems. Formations that show signs of artificial modification." The room grew quiet as they absorbed this information. The possibility that other species had once worked with crystal technology in their own unique ways opened up new frontiers of discovery. "Perhaps that's the real legacy of what happened here," James mused. "Not just the technical innovations, but the proof that different approaches to technology can coexist and make each other stronger." Rhea walked to the window, placing her hand against the crystal surface. She could feel the subtle vibrations of the station's power systems, human and Zeth-Carey technology, working in perfect harmony. "When I was trying to save the Endeavor, I never imagined it would lead to all this," she admitted. "I just knew we had to find a way to work together, or we'd all lose something precious." "That's the human way," Vothrel observed, his patterns showing newfound understanding. "You see limitations as challenges to overcome. We saw technology as something to preserve unchanged. Together, we found a middle path, growing and evolving while maintaining deep respect for the fundamental nature of what we work with." The station hummed around them, its crystal matrices singing with new harmonies. In workshops and laboratories throughout the facility, humans and Zeth-Carey continued to learn from each other, breaking down barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. The Void Swimmers sought to force evolution through technological dominance, Nileth reflected. They never understood that true progress comes from partnership, between species, between traditions, between the organic and the technological. Outside the window, a new ship was docking, the first of many scientific vessels coming to study at the Joint Technology Center. Its hull gleamed with the distinctive shimmer of crystal-enhanced alloys, a visible symbol of how far they'd come. "So what's next?" Captain Wells asked, looking around at the assembled team. Rhea smiled, thinking of the countless possibilities that lay ahead. "We keep learning. We keep growing. And most importantly, we keep remembering that the strongest innovations come not from forcing change, but from finding harmony between different ways of thinking." As they stood together, watching the station buzz with activity, they knew they were witnessing more than just a technological revolution. They were seeing the birth of a new way forward, one where human adaptability and Zethkari wisdom combined to create something greater than either could have achieved alone. The crisis that had brought them together had passed, but its effects would ripple through both civilizations for generations to come. In finding a way to save one ship, they had opened the door to a future where the boundaries between preservation and innovation, between respect and progress, began to fade away. It was a future worth building, one careful step at a time.